There's a lovely little crab spider on here, perfectly yellow, and blending in with these flowers. Hey there, Nico here from Zambia Flora, and we're out in the Lusaka East Forest Reserve looking for the early flowering Eulophia species. Here we have a fantastic specimen of Eulophia speciosa with these bright yellow, fairly large flowers. This is up now flowering together with things like Eulophia cucullata and Eulophia livingstoniana, which tend to be much more showy species, to say, for lack of a better word. But what we're on the lookout for is some of the smaller, inconspicuous species. But always nice to see these when we're out and about. So let's go have a look and see what we can find of the inconspicuous ones. Here we have one of the most obscure small flowered species that we've come across so far. This little thing here, not 100% sure of what the actual ID is, but I think it could be potentially Eulophia obscura. And these flowers are absolutely tiny. They don't open very wide either. I don't think this plant produces leaves that will be able to photosynthesize. The stems are purplish. Even the leaves that are here are purplish and more vestigial than anything else. A difficult one to spot, and we've found it on more than one occasion, but rarely with the flowers open. And here we've got this open flower, so you can see the kind of maroon brown sepals, the yellow petals, and then the lip that has kind of a pink edging around it, and then yellow in the throat. So we will be collecting these to try and figure out what it is, hopefully. We've got a nice clump of kind of the inconspicuously showy Eulophia gonychila here. So actually quite a nice clump. There's about 6 or so flowering stems. I say inconspicuous because you can't really see them from far off, but when you get up close they are unmistakable, and this kind of pinky purple coloration is quite lovely to it. I've seen some quite varied flower colors between darker purple, and we even found, I don't know if it's an albino, but it's quite white, and hoping to see if that will be something that is held true going forward. I did collect that plant to grow it back at home. But these ones are always nice to see. I have some of these growing at home. They come up and flower usually pretty early. Mine back at the farm are finished. These are almost in perfect flower at the moment. But just always lovely to see them in this nice clump like this. This is a nice little find. We've actually been finding this quite a bit as we've been traveling around through central Zambia and then here at the Forest Reserve as well. This is Eulophia venulosa, and I would have to say it's probably one of the prettiest of the very early flowering Eulophias. It has these lovely little curled back petals, and the sepals kind of stick straight up, and if you can see them up close, they've kind of got these long lines running the length from the base all the way to the tip, and a nice kind of greenish margin to these browny sepals there. But I think the biggest kind of showy factor is obviously going to be the lip in this guy, which is quite white with some nice pink veining on the side lobes, and then the white papillae that kind of stick off the mid lobe of the lip. This is a fantastic clump. There's got to be, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 9 inflorescences that are up and flowering right now, and perfect flowering. You know, there is one that has a seed pod here, but almost all the other flowers are in perfect condition. A lovely find. I always love to see this one. I'm hoping to be able to grow it a little bit more, but coming across it in the bush is always a delight. I won't lie, a lot of the early flowering species are fairly underwhelming. Early flowering Eulophia species. This is Eulophia and norlindhii. It has more kind of yellowy green flowers. You can eventually pick up them quite easily in the landscape, especially against the brown fallen leaves and things like that. Again, this is another species that doesn't produce leaves. It's probably mycoheterotrophic, surviving off of the mycorrhizal associations that it has, but it does have quite a nice little flower here, more yellowy green again, but then with a very distinct white lip. Most of these flowers are kind of on the secund side, meaning they all come from along one plane, but that differs from plant to plant from what we've seen effectively. Very short spur on it, but then it has this really globose tip to the spur, which is quite nice. So we've been seeing it quite a bit, not a surprise to find it, but it is a nice little addition to those early flowering species. This little one here is Eulophia rolfeana, very distinguishable by what they call basal pouches at the base of the sepals here. Never many flowers on it, I think maximum 5, and this first one here has 4. The last one behind it is only going to have 2 effectively. Again, not a very showy species, that kind of yellowy brown, yellowy purple, quite a nice amount of papillae on the lip, and these flowers do not open very widely again. This is a photosynthetic type. It's got its green leaves just coming up here, and we've seen this here and there about in the reserve, stuff like that, but quite a nice little species to come across, but not very showy, to say the least. We've got a lovely specimen of Eulophia cucullata here, the foxglove Eulophia. It's in kind of perfect condition. All the flowers are looking really good. This one is quite light in pink. It can be almost white or even quite dark pink, almost purpley and things like that. The sepals swept back, the petals kind of forming a bit of a hood together with this very large lip and this kind of sac-like spur at the very back. Very easily recognizable and a nice addition to the woodland flora here. But you can see these things from quite a distance. They make quite an impact in the woodland. And I'm just looking in the throat of this flower in particular, and I actually see a little crab spider who's lying in wait, waiting for a bee or whatever is going to try and pollinate this to then catch it for its meal. So fantastic sight. Nice to see the ecology that also surrounds this plant, and probably not the last one we'll see today. Here we have Eulophia seleensis. We've normally been finding it in actually these kind of lovely little clumps. It's a very kind of dainty flower. They blow quite about in the wind, and they have a lovely little purpley pink edge to the flowers. Again, more kind of browny yellow overall, but the sprays that this put up, and they're quite long lasting as well, which is quite nice. They have easier to kind of tell at this time of year because the leaves are emerging at the same time that the flowers are coming up. But as the wind blows and they shake in the wind, it's a lovely little species to be coming across, and we've been finding it quite a bit. So always a joy to see this one too. I'm back in my nursery in Lusaka. I've been traveling actually with a colleague over the last week, looking for these early flowering Eulophia species. There's still a lot to kind of figure out, especially trying to figure out species delimitations, especially with some of the ones that are very similar looking. I've also made some live collections of material that I'll grow on ideally to produce seed and contribute to the Millennium Seed Bank. So I will keep these going here in the nursery and hopefully be able to continue to collect seed from them. There's one or two that are still flowering, but most of them have gone over and are now in the pod phase. So we will continue to take care of these, and this will act more for research material going over the years as need be. But it has been a great trip. We've seen a dozen or two different species, some that are very, very slight, some that are much more ornamental, some that you kind of just look at and most people wouldn't even think it's an orchid. So there's a great diversity of these early flowering Eulophia species, and it's kind of nice to be able to be part of some of this work, trying to figure out how they're related to each other and actually get an idea as to what the species are, and are there other species that haven't been found or that are kind of lumped together, but they should actually be declared different species. So that work is still going to be ongoing, but for fieldwork this year, we've finished that up. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.